Angela Hayes had just left a charity fundraiser, driving home through the quiet suburban streets of Dallas. Dressed elegantly in a shimmering sequined gown, she looked forward to reuniting with her family after an evening spent supporting a cause she deeply cared about. As she drove, her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Her husband, Malcolm Hayes, the newly appointed police commissioner of Dallas County, was calling. She smiled, murmuring to herself that she would be home soon. However, the glow of flashing red and blue lights in her rearview mirror abruptly shattered her peace. Angela furrowed her brows as she slowed down and pulled over to the side of the road. Confusion crept into her mind. She had not been speeding, ignored any stop signs, or used her phone while driving. As she rolled down the window, a tall officer with a stern expression approached and demanded her license and registration without greeting or explanation. She handed over her documents calmly and asked why she was being stopped. The officer responded curtly, stating that her vehicle matched the description of one involved in suspicious activity in the area. The vague accusation sent a chill down Angela's spine. Before she could respond, the officer ordered her out of the car. Angela hesitated, attempting to understand the situation, but the officer repeated the command more forcefully. Another police cruiser pulled up, and two more officers stepped out, their flashlights beaming into the darkness. Her hands trembled as she unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out, keeping her hands visible just as Malcolm had taught her. Despite her compliance, the officers proceeded to search her car without her consent, rifling through the trunk filled with fundraiser brochures as if expecting to uncover something illicit. Humiliation washed over her, but Angela remained composed. She requested to call her husband, only for the officers to scoff and deny her. With her patience wearing thin, she carefully retrieved her phone and dialed Malcolm. As the officers continued their search, they seemed almost disappointed that nothing in her behavior or belongings justified their suspicion. But they were not finished yet. Malcolm Hayes was at home when his phone rang again. He had been trying to reach his wife, Angela, after she left the fundraiser, but she hadn't picked up. When he finally heard her voice, something in her tone made his stomach tighten. "Malcolm, I'm pulled over by the police," she said, her voice steady but tense. "They're searching my car without cause. I need you here now." Instantly, Malcolm's demeanor shifted. His years as a public servant and, most recently, as the newly appointed police commissioner of Dallas County had given him the ability to remain calm in the face of chaos. But this wasn't just another incident. This was his wife. "Where are you?" he asked, already grabbing his keys. Angela gave him her location, her voice faltering slightly as the weight of the situation settled in. "Please hurry." By the time Malcolm arrived, the scene was already tense. Angela stood outside her car, arms crossed, while the officers continued their unwarranted search. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating her neatly organized trunk, where boxes of fundraiser brochures had been pulled out as if they were evidence in a crime scene. A small crowd had gathered, watching with curiosity and concern. Some had even begun recording the encounter on their phones. Malcolm stepped out of his sleek black SUV, his sharp suit and polished shoes standing in stark contrast to the flashing lights and gravelly roadside. His police badge was clipped to his belt, gleaming under the streetlights. The moment the officers saw him approach, their postures stiffened, but they held their ground. "Good evening," Malcolm said, his voice controlled but firm. "I'm Malcolm Hayes, Dallas County Police Commissioner. Would someone like to explain to me why my wife is being detained and why her vehicle is being searched without cause?" The lead officer, an older man with a hardened expression, straightened his posture, but didn't meet Malcolm's eyes directly. "Sir, we received a report of suspicious activity involving a car matching this description." Malcolm's jaw tightened. "Suspicious activity?" He glanced at Angela, still standing tall despite the humiliation. Then, turning back to the officers, he continued, A well-dressed woman, driving home from a charity event, in a sedan. That's what you're calling suspicious? The younger officer shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his partner. The realization of who they were dealing with was sinking in, but the damage had already been done. The tension in the air was thick as Malcolm Hayes locked eyes with the officers surrounding his wife. His voice, calm but edged with authority, cut through the silence. "Since when does protocol allow you to search someone's vehicle without probable cause?" he demanded, stepping closer. The older officer, clearly the one in charge, squared his shoulders but hesitated. "Sir, we were just following procedure." "Procedure?" Malcolm interrupted, his voice rising slightly. "Tell me, did my wife give you permission to search her car? Did you have a warrant? Did you have any legitimate reason beyond a vague claim of suspicious activity?" The silence that followed was damning. Angela, still standing tall despite the humiliation she had endured, looked at her husband with a mix of relief and exhaustion. The officers shifted uneasily, aware now that they had made a serious mistake. But Malcolm wasn't done. "You didn't even let her make a phone call at first," Angela added, her voice steady but firm. "You treated me like a suspect from the moment you pulled me over." The younger officer, clearly uncomfortable, opened his mouth to speak but stopped himself. The older officer cleared his throat, trying to regain control of the situation. "Commissioner Hayes, let's not escalate this. Perhaps we can handle this back at the precinct." Malcolm let out a short, humorless laugh. "Now you want to de-escalate? After you've humiliated my wife and violated her rights? Number. We're addressing this here, in public, exactly where you created this mess." By now the gathered crowd had grown larger. Some whispered among themselves while others held up their phones, recording everything. The flashing police lights bathed the street in a harsh red and blue glow, highlighting the unease on the officers' faces. The power dynamic had shifted, and they knew it. Malcolm turned to them. "Do you have any idea what kind of liability you've put this department in? You're harassing an innocent citizen, my wife no less, without justification. This isn't just unprofessional, it's unacceptable." One of the officers stammered, "Sir, we were just doing our job." "Your actions suggest otherwise," Malcolm shot back. Then, crossing his arms, he gave them one final order. "Call your supervisor, now." The lead officer hesitated but had no choice. He reached for his radio, his demeanor reluctant but compliant. But what happened next would push the situation to a breaking point. The fallout from the night's events was swift and relentless. By the next morning, videos of the confrontation had gone viral across social media, spreading under hashtags like #JusticeForAngela and #AccountabilityMatters. News outlets quickly picked up the story, running headlines that questioned the integrity of the Dallas County Police Department. The public outrage was immediate, and the officers involved found themselves at the center of a firestorm. At home, Malcolm and Angela sat at their dining table, processing the overwhelming response. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, but the weight of the previous night still lingered. Angela, exhausted but resolute, sipped her coffee as Malcolm scrolled through his phone, reading articles and public reactions. "They're calling it the Hayes incident," Malcolm murmured, shaking his head. "I knew it would get attention, but this is bigger than I expected." Angela set her cup down and met his gaze. "It's not about us, Malcolm. It's about what this represents. How many people go through this every day and don't have the platform we do? They deserve justice too." Malcolm nodded, his expression grave. "I've spent my entire career trying to root out this kind of behavior. Last night made it clear there's still so much more work to do." Later that day, an emergency press conference was called. Malcolm stood before a sea of reporters and community members, his face set with determination. "What happened last night was unacceptable," he declared. "The actions of those officers were not just a violation of policy, but a betrayal of public trust. There will be full accountability. The crowd erupted in applause, but Malcolm knew this was only the beginning. Real change had to follow. The response to the incident was immediate and far-reaching. The Dallas County Police Department faced mounting pressure from the public, activists, and media outlets demanding accountability. Malcolm Hayes, as the newly appointed police commissioner, found himself at the center of the controversy, but he refused to let the moment pass without real action. At an emergency press conference, Malcolm stood before reporters and concerned citizens, his expression resolute. Angela stood beside him, her presence a quiet but powerful reminder of the injustice she had faced. Cameras flashed as he stepped up to the podium. "What happened last night was unacceptable," he began, his voice firm. "The actions of those officers were not just a violation of protocol, but a betrayal of the public's trust. I want to be clear. This is not who we are, and this is not who we will be." He let the words hang in the air for a moment before continuing. "There will be a full and transparent investigation into the incident. Effective immediately, the officers involved have been placed on administrative leave pending review. But this isn't just about one case. It's about systemic change. We need to ask ourselves why incidents like this continue to happen and what we, as leaders, will do to stop them." The crowd erupted in applause, but Malcolm remained serious. He turned to Angela, who stepped forward to speak. "When I was pulled over last night," she said, her voice steady, "I did everything right. I complied. I followed every instruction. And still, I was treated like a suspect instead of a citizen. I wasn't seen as a person. I was seen as a problem to be dealt with." She took a deep breath before continuing. "But I also know that change is possible. It starts with accountability, with people speaking up, and with leaders willing to challenge the system from within. We have to do better for everyone." In the days that followed, the department moved swiftly. New training initiatives on de-escalation tactics and implicit bias were introduced. A citizens' advisory board was established to oversee complaints and ensure transparency. Malcolm personally reached out to community leaders, promising real reform, not just words. Meanwhile, the officers involved in the unlawful stop faced disciplinary action. One officer chose to resign rather than face the consequences, while others were reassigned pending further investigation. Their actions had placed a harsh spotlight on policing practices, forcing an internal reckoning within the department. As for Angela, she found herself thrust into the role of an advocate. Using her platform, she amplified the voices of those who had endured similar mistreatment but lacked the ability to speak out. She refused to let her experience be just another viral moment. She turned it into a movement. The Hayes family had taken an unjust moment and transformed it into a catalyst for meaningful change. Angela Hayes had never expected to become an activist, but after her unjust traffic stop, she knew she couldn't stay silent. What happened to her wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a reflection of a broader issue affecting countless individuals who lacked the platform to fight back. With the media still buzzing about the Hayes incident, Angela decided to use her voice to push for real change. She began attending community meetings, speaking at rallies, and sharing her experience in interviews. "This isn't just about me," she told reporters. "It's about the countless people who face this kind of treatment every day, but don't have the chance to tell their stories." Her words resonated with many, and soon she found herself at the forefront of a movement for police accountability and justice reform. While Angela became a vocal advocate, Malcolm continued his efforts from within the system. He implemented stricter policies on traffic stops and searches, ensuring that officers followed proper procedures and respected citizens' rights. He also worked with local leaders to improve police-community relations, emphasizing the need for trust and fairness in law enforcement. Angela and Malcolm's work complemented each other perfectly. She challenged the system from the outside, while he worked to change it from within. Together they turned what could have been just another viral moment into something far more impactful, a push for real, lasting reform. "It's not just about what happened to me," Angela often said. "It's about what we do to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." And with each speech, meeting, and policy change, the Hayes family proved that real change starts when people refuse to stay silent. The story of Angela and Malcolm Hayes carries profound lessons about justice, resilience, and the power of standing up for what is right. For older generations who have witnessed decades of societal change, this story serves as a reminder that progress is not automatic. It requires courage, accountability, and a willingness to speak out against injustice. One key lesson is that dignity and respect should never be negotiable. Angela did everything right. She complied, remained calm, and followed every instruction, yet she was still treated unfairly. This reflects a deeper issue in society. Sometimes, even those who abide by the rules are subjected to prejudice and mistreatment. As elders, you have the wisdom to recognize when history repeats itself, and the responsibility to guide younger generations toward a more just world. Another lesson is that change begins with action. Malcolm could have handled the situation privately, but instead he chose transparency, demanding accountability in front of the public. This act not only protected his wife, but also set a precedent for meaningful reform. It teaches us that using our voices, no matter our age or position, can make a difference. Lastly, the story highlights the importance of community and solidarity. When people came together to document and support Angela, their collective power forced change. In our own lives, whether through mentorship, advocacy, or simply sharing wisdom, we can foster a society where respect and fairness prevail. True justice is built when generations work together to ensure a better future for all.